Just nightmare.
Somebody took something very near and dear to my heart from me, and I want to know why.
She was 11 years old. She was going to school, like millions of kids.
You read about these things, but you don't think in your town, your small community, that anything like this would ever occur.
A little girl, being kidnapped while walking to the school bus stop.
A couple kids started screaming, they took her, they took her.
Goedenavond en welkom bij deze reportage over J.C. Lee Dugard. Phil en Nancy deden iets voor mij dat niemand anders voor mij zou hebben gedaan. Ze betaalden $200 zodat ik mijn eigen kat zou hebben. Dat zijn nou niet direct de woorden die je verwacht te lezen in het dagboek van een jong meisje dat ontvoerd is door diezelfde Phil en Nancy. Toch heeft J.C. Lee Dugard 18 jaar en 11 weken lang moeten leven als seksslavin van Phil en Nancy. In 1991 werd ze 11 jaar oud, op klaarlichte dag voor de ogen van haar stiefvader ontvoerd. 18 jaar lang werd er helemaal niets van haar vernomen. Niemand ging er meer van uit dat ze nog in leven was. Maar op 26 augustus 2009 meldde J.C. Lee zich op het politiebureau. Gezond en wel. Maar ze was niet alleen. Ze verkeerde in het gezelschap van 2 meisjes. Haar dochters.
10 juni 1991. J.C. Lee Dugard verdwijnt spoorloos uit haar woonplaats South Lake Tahoe. Een dorpje in het noorden van Californië. Samen met de politie stellen vrienden en familie alles in het werk om de scholieren terug te vinden.
Nobody really knew for certain what happened to J.C. Lee. We just knew that she was gone and we had to find her.
If a kidnapped child is not found within the first 2 or 3 days, there's a very strong presumption that we're going to have a body found later on. It's very rare for a child kidnapping to have a happy ending.
What do? You are in limbo. Do you mourn or do you fight? Do you accept what people say, the stats, the odds are that she's dead, or do you continue to hold out hope?
What her mom must have had to go through every single day, minute by minute, hour by hour, wondering where her daughter is and if she's alive, what circumstances she's in.
27 augustus 2009. Ruim 18 jaar nadat J.C. werd ontvoerd, komt de politie van Noord-Californië met een schokkende mededeling.
J.C. Dugard was found alive in Antioch. Excuse me.
I just kind of had chills run down my spine and just stood there in silence wondering that it was a mistake, that it couldn't, how could it be her? It's been so long.
I was just screaming and crying. I can't believe it, but I can believe it.
Thank God she's alive. She really is alive. It was a tremendous moment of joy. But when the details started to come out, I was horrified.
We have the cadaver dogs going through specific areas.
Whoever took her, what have they done to her this entire time?
In augustus 2009 worden Philip Garrido en zijn echtgenote Nancy gearresteerd op verdenking van 29 misdrijven, waaronder het ontvoeren en verkrachten van J.C. Dugard. Het echtpaar is nog altijd in afwachting van zijn proces. Garrido is al eerder in aanraking geweest met de politie. In 1967 vormt de San Francisco Bay Area het epicentrum van vrije liefde, anti-oorlogsbetogingen en geestverruimende middelen. Een kilometer of 90 naar het oosten ligt Brentwood, de woonplaats van middelbare scholier Philip Garrido.
During his late teens, he was involved in a motorcycle accident, and what coincided with his recovery from that motorcycle accident was his delving into the use of LSD and marijuana. And at that point, from what his father told us, is that he kind of lost touch with kind of being a normal person.
It's crazy. He's out of his head.
Volgens zijn politiedossier belandt Garrido op 21-jarige leeftijd op het slechte pad.
In 1972, he and a friend met a couple of teenage girls at a library in Antioch and brought them to a motel. One of the 14-year-old girls told police that at some point they were doing drugs and she passed out.
De politie verdenkt Garrido ervan het meisje verkracht te hebben.
But ultimately the charges were dismissed because the victim declined to testify at the last minute.
4 jaar later ontvoert Garrido een 25-jarige blackjack dealer.
On November 22nd, 1976, Katie Calloway was leaving a grocery store in South Lake Tahoe, and Philip Garrido overpowered her and handcuffed her.
He took her back to what has been described as a sex dungeon.
He said, "I just want a piece of ass. If you be good, you won't get hurt."
Een surveillerende politieman hoort de vrouw om hulp roepen.
Ultimately, Katie Calloway was able to free herself and run up to the police officer and alert him that something was amiss.
Garrido wordt gearresteerd en moet voor de rechter verschijnen.
He testified to a court psychiatrist that he would have odd sexual fantasies about young girls and masturbate around grammar schools. He admitted to the fantasies almost taking over his life.
Ook geeft Garrido in de rechtszaal toe dat hij maar liefst 4 jaar op rij tussen 1972 en 1976 dagelijks LSD heeft gebruikt.
This could be an explanation for the convoluted thought process that he went through in his kidnapping of the dealer and taking her to his sex dungeon. He is able to live in a fantasy world.
In juni 1977 verdwijnt de 26-jarige Garrido achter de tralies, na veroordeeld te zijn voor verkrachting en ontvoering.
He received a state sentence from Nevada for the rape, for the kidnap. He was transferred to Leavenworth, Kansas to serve a federal sentence of 50 years.
Op 3 mei 1980 bevalt de jonge alleenstaande moeder Terry in Anaheim, Californië, van haar dochter J.C. Lee Dugard.
Terry raised her with values. Her smile was just a beautiful, innocent, childlike smile, and you just couldn't help but being drawn to it.
2400 kilometer verderop zit de voor ontvoering en verkrachting veroordeelde Philip Garrido, opgesloten in de gevangenis waar hij hunkert naar een beetje liefde.
Nancy Bocanegra was visiting a relative in Leavenworth and at some point met Philip Garrido. Eventually, she moved from her Denver home to an apartment near the prison where she could see him more regularly, and they were married while he was a prisoner.
Kind of raised my eyes as to whether you were going to find true love in the visiting room of a prison.
In januari van het jaar 1988 komt de reclasseringsdienst tot de conclusie dat Philip Garrido geen gevaar meer vormt voor de samenleving. Dus hij komt uit de gevangenis.
He only served 11 of the 50-year sentence, partly because of factors like good behavior and how they acted in prison.
Garrido was a model interview before a parole board, a model prisoner inside the institution, with the idea of gaming the system in such a way that he could be back on the street as soon as he was.
People should be outraged that Philip Garrido first could be a suspect in the rape of a 14-year-old girl and beat that case because she was so traumatized she could not testify. He should have been prosecuted for that, but he was on the streets. Then he rapes another woman that he kidnaps and serves only 11 years of a 50-year sentence, beats the system and gets out on parole.
Als Garrido op vrije voeten komt, is J.C. Lee Dugard 8 jaar oud. Een jaar later trouwt haar moeder met bouwvakker Carl Probin. Kort daarop bevalt ze van J.C.'s stiefzusje, Shana. In september 1990 verlaat het gezin Orange County om zich te gaan vestigen in het vredige plaatsje South Lake Tahoe, in het noorden van Californië.
A lot of families like the Probins move up here from hustle and bustle of the cities.
It's a very close-knit community where people can really feel safe and really enjoy the beauty and the serenity of the lake.
South Lake Tahoe was a wonderful, wonderful place to be. We got to play outside as kids, ride our bikes in the street, play in the woods. We knew all of our neighbors. Everybody knew who we were. There's always a friendly face staring back at you.
JC came to Myers Elementary in 5th grade, and she made a few friends. A lot of these students had known each other for a long time, so to be the new kid on the block was a hard thing.
The teachers introduced JC as the new girl in town. I remember her being quiet, kind of kept to herself a little bit, but very nice.
In een opstel omschrijft JC zichzelf als volgt.
Blonde hair, blue-eyed, freckled, sibling of Shayna. Lover of chocolate, cats, horses. Who feels happy on holidays, pain when hurt. Who needs loving care, friends, family. Who fears bumblebees, spinach, spiders. Who would like to see my friends. Less homework, more trees.
June 10th was a Monday, the beautiful spring day. We had a couple of days of school left.
The bus came pretty early to pick us up. It was usually around 7 o'clock.
JC would have left her house just like she had probably every other morning and headed up the hill.
Maar 10 juni 1991 is geen ochtend als alle andere. Volgens het politiedossier wandelt de 11-jarige JC naar de bushalte als er een grijze auto naast haar komt rijden. Opeens springt er een vrouw uit die auto. Ze grijpt JC vast, die op dat moment nog niet eens uit het zicht van haar stiefvader is verdwenen.
He was working in the garage and he heard her scream and was seeing her being pulled into the car. There was a bicycle laying there and he just jumped on it and started pedaling after the cars as fast and as hard as he could, yelling at the neighbors, call 911.
Carl Probin tried to follow that car as fast as he could, but was not able to keep up with a car that was zooming away with his child.
My daughter was just kidnapped. It was a great Ford. A man and a woman in the car.
The police officers showed up a little bit later and wouldn't allow any of us to get off the bus, and then started asking us questions as to if we saw anything. If we saw JC, if we saw the car, if we saw the people that were in it.
When the students that had been at the bus stop relayed that what they had seen, what they had heard, then my anxieties skyrocketed.
Parents were terrified. So many things were running through our minds. We were all in a state of fear. It was just horrible fear.
Usually when a child is kidnapped, it's for some type of sexual purpose.
Students were afraid. I had a group of girls who came to me and they wanted to pray for JC. They were very, very worried about her.
We were very young and very innocent at the time, so we thought she'll be back tomorrow or the next day. I don't think we ever really thought to ourselves that she was gone forever.
Right away, we were all afraid for our children.
Students were aware that something had happened.
To see her empty desk staring us in the face was very hard.
It just sent a ripple through us. It was terrifying.
JC's moeder, Terry Probin, smeekt de kidnappers haar dochter vrij te laten.
You may like her, but we love her too. And it's time that she comes home.
Terry handled this whole situation with class and character. She was able to go on camera and do interviews and plead to the kidnappers to return her daughter. It still gives me goosebumps.
When a child is abducted, the greatest likelihood for recovery occurs within those early minutes and hours. So you can't wait until tomorrow. You have to move now.
Bij de zoektocht naar JC roept de politie van Tahoe de hulp in van zoveel mogelijk collega's.
El Dorado County Sheriff's Department, the City of South Lake Tahoe Police, the California Highway Patrol, as well as the FBI, all came together in trying to get the word out and putting her picture out everywhere.
You want to get out as much information as you can as fast as possible to the public.
JC's stiefvader Carl Probin assisteert de politie bij het maken van een compositieschets van de kidnapper.
Carl was probably the best witness, and he, described the vehicle. He described the woman who reached out and grabbed JC.
Ook JC's moeder legt een gedetailleerde verklaring af tegenover de politie.
Carl was standing in the driveway as this car went slowly up the hill towards JC. He was watching JC more than the car, concerned for her safety. The situation just didn't feel right. When the car got to JC, it suddenly sped up, darted across the street, and cut off her path. The driver jumped out of the car and pulled JC in.
Ondertussen worden de rechercheurs overspoeld met tips van bewoners.
A lot of the leads that we got involve a fast-moving car driving around Tahoe. Other leads involve people that they thought might be suspects.
We had a secret witness program set up here. There was an awful lot of effort by law enforcement to continue to get leads, but the more time goes by, the less leads that come in.
JC's lijdensweg gaat gewoon door. Volgens een aanklacht die in 2009 wordt ingediend, wordt het meisje herhaaldelijk misbruikt door Philip en Nancy in een woning in Antioch in Californië.
It's so hard to really understand what this was like for an 11-year-old child to be ripped from safety, to be held captive by a person who was a convicted rapist.
JC's verhaal krijgt veel aandacht in het goed bekeken programma America's Most Wanted. Dankzij dat programma gaat de zoektocht naar het meisje onverminderd voort.
Publicity is how you bring missing children home. So the missing children always have a high priority for us. You know anything that you think could be a clue, call our hotline.
The power of the media is the most important tool in the search for a missing child. The biggest challenge is to reach as many people as possible in a timely manner.
When you have a famous case publicized on America's Most Wanted, the phone starts to ring.
Al snel mengen zich andere organisaties in de zoektocht naar JC. Ze steunen de rouwende familie waar mogelijk.
We worked with the police. We created a poster which we circulated through all of our photo partners. We tried to generate media awareness on the case.
We got involved and assisted in the photo dissemination and the local search efforts.
There became a movement to help by sending out flyers all over town.
You couldn't go anywhere without seeing JC's picture in a storefront. You couldn't turn on the news without hearing something having to do with the continuing search effort.
I always looked for her, whether it was a shirt or another blonde girl walking down the street, didn't matter. We always looked for her.
De inwoners van Tahoe houden inzamelingen en doneren geld om de zoektocht naar JC te helpen financieren.
It was really important for our entire community to get out and help.
Maar als de politie tegen augustus nog geen steek verder is, begint de wanhoop toe te slaan bij de ouders van JC.
You saw just pain on their faces for the loss of JC. There just weren't the words to describe how they were feeling.
I don't know how a parent gets the strength to deal with what Terry Probin had to deal with.
I remember walking up to JC's mom at the library and just kind of saying to her that I was so sorry that her daughter had been taken and that I had rode the bus that day, and just to let her know that if I remembered anything that I didn't know at the time, that I would let her know.
Op 10 december 1991 wordt er een stille waken gehouden om te herdenken dat JC Dugard 6 maanden spoorloos is. America's Most Wanted is terug in South Lake Tahoe om een update te geven.
This little girl needs to be returned to her family. Someone must have seen something. Someone must know something.
It was a reminder to the public to keep that memory of JC, that picture, that beautiful blonde face out there.
I fervently believe in all of these cases, somebody knows. We just have to reach that somebody.
We're able to put millions and millions of eyes to a case and sometimes get lucky and solve it.
She gave birth to the children in a shed with no medical attention whatsoever and no anesthesiology.
Welkom terug bij Reportage. Op 10 juni 1991 is de dan 11-jarige JC Lee Dugard op klaarlichte dag en onder de ogen van haar stiefvader ontvoerd. Het is nu een half jaar later en nog steeds is er geen teken van leven van haar vernomen. De politie heeft iedere getuige en iedere verdachte gehoord. Ook de moeder en de stiefvader van JC Lee.
Carl Probin was interviewed and questioned by police and eventually cleared, but suspicion continued to linger over him in the community and the neighborhood.
One of the things that we have to do is to eliminate any family participation in the act. Investigation shifted from looking at him into the other phases.
In januari 1992 schrijft discjockey Larry Williams samen met een band uit de buurt een muzikaal eerbetoon. Dat nummer heet J.C. Lee en moet de mensen aansporen te blijven uitkijken naar het vermiste meisje.
I kept seeing JC's picture everywhere, and it was that poster and that smile that brought me to write the song.
The song was kind of like a prayer, saying that we're going to find you, there's love around you, there's faith, there's hope.
With a smile, you have touched our lives and opened up our hearts.
Op 10 juni 1992 wordt een trieste mijlpaal bereikt. Honderden inwoners van South Lake Tahoe zijn bijeengekomen voor een tweede waken.
It had been a year and still we had not found J.C. Lee.
Dan wordt er in maart 1993 een aanhoudingsbevel uitgevaardigd voor Philip Garrido wegens het in bezit hebben van drugs.
Garrido was found in violation of his parole for drug possession. And he served about a month in jail and another 4 months in home confinement.
Terwijl haar echtgenoot achter de tralies zit, heeft Nancy Garrido de taak JC in de gaten te houden.
Phil was in jail, but Nancy could have let her go and none would have been the wiser.
Kort nadat Garrido is vrijgekomen, bevalt de 13-jarige JC van een dochtertje dat ze Angel noemt. Men gaat ervan uit dat Philip de vader is. De jaren vervliegen en als 1997 op zijn einde loopt, wordt de zoektocht naar J.C. Lee Dugard gestaakt.
There comes a point in which the photographs become outdated. If you show a photograph of an 11-year-old child and the child is now 18, you're not going to get a lot of help.
The world forgets. The media spotlight dims. Police run out of leads to pursue. Everybody forgets except these parents.
Ondertussen is de 18-jarige JC zwanger van haar tweede dochter Starlet. Wederom wordt aangenomen dat Philip Garrido de vader is.
JC gave birth to the children in a shed with no medical attention whatsoever and no anesthesiology.
De politie gaat ervan uit dat Nancy Garrido, een gediplomeerd verpleegkundige, heeft geassisteerd bij de bevalling. JC en haar twee dochters wonen vermoedelijk op dit afgeschermde terrein achter het huis van de Garrido's.
JC figured out how to survive. Her brain adapted. You can only tolerate so much fear and so much anxiety.
Once she had children, she was not only protecting herself, she was protecting her children.
Om bezig te blijven zou JC Philip Garrido geholpen hebben met het runnen van het printbedrijfje dat hij aan huis heeft. Terwijl zij probeert te overleven, wordt het leven in South Lake Tahoe ondraaglijk voor haar ouders. Terry en Carl Probin verhuizen naar het zuiden van Californië, maar ook daar blijft het verlies van hun dochter hen achtervolgen.
Every time the phone rings, there's a hope that it'll be the phone call that will reunite them with their child.
JC's disappearance hit Terry Probin hard, and she fell into a depression. And it became a strain on her marriage with Carl Probin.
Each of them had to deal with it in their own way separately. The enormity of this horrible situation had to be just too much stress for them to be able to cope with.
Hoewel Carl voor de politie al lang geen verdachte meer is, blijven anderen zo hun bedenkingen houden.
But there's so many people that would talk underneath their breath, and he was a suspect.
De enorme spanning rond de verdwijning van JC leidt ertoe dat haar ouders in 1999 scheiden.
So many parents of long-term missing children, their marriages and their relationships fall apart.
For Terry, it's what happened. She's gone, but you were there. The stress of losing a child can destroy a marriage.
In 1999, 8 jaar na de ontvoering van J.C. Lee, wordt Philip Garrido's voorbeeldige gedrag door de reclasseringsdienst beloond met de kwijtschelding van de eerder opgelegde voorwaardelijke vrijlating die levenslang was opgelegd.
The fact that he had a print shop, the fact that he was not being apprehended around schools, he probably would go down on his parole officer's logbook as a partial success story.
Hoewel hij niet langer onder federaal toezicht staat, moet Garrido zich nog wel blijven melden bij de reclassering in Nevada. Als hij naar Californië verhuist, dragen de autoriteiten in Nevada hun taken over aan hun collega's daar.
As a person on parole, he has virtually no expectation of privacy and could have been searched by any law enforcement agent at any time. In this case, no one did.
Ondertussen nemen op 10 juni 2001 meer dan 100 mensen deel aan een stille tocht op een snelweg die langs South Lake Tahoe loopt. Als eerbetoon aan JC draagt iedereen een roze lint.
We did a parade on the 10-year anniversary of her abduction, and Terry Probin came up for the parade.
Lifts my spirit real high. I'm overwhelmed. This is more than I can ask for.
Terwijl ze in haar oude woonplaats wordt herdacht, lijkt de 21-jarige JC zich 290 kilometer verderop aangepast te hebben aan het leven in Antioch. Klanten van Philip Garrido's printbedrijf herinneren zich de jonge moeder die zichzelf Alyssa noemde nog goed.
When an abductor gives a child a new name, it sometimes has the effect of taking away a piece of their identity, which gives the abductor greater control over them.
She felt that her survival was critically depending upon her ability to follow the program suggested by Philip Garrido.
The Stockholm Syndrome develops when a person develops an emotional attachment of sort with their captor. We talk about the 3 Ds: dread, debility, and dependence. You need to be completely dependent on the abductor. You need to be in dread of what might happen to you. And you need to feel debilitated in that you have no control and that there is no means for escape.
She was convinced that it was to her advantage not to attempt to escape, to run away, or, to tell a customer of the printing shop, who she really was.
Sommige klanten vragen zich wel af wat Alyssa nou precies van Garrido is.
Alyssa never called Philip dad. Then I go and pick up the stuff. I ask Alyssa, how much is this? I don't know, you have to ask him. Ask who? Ask Philip. She never mentioned as the father.
The first time Phil introduced JC and the kids, JC was sitting across from me, and with one kind of a swing of the arm, Phil said, "This is my wife and my kids." And I was looking at JC, I glanced over at the kids, and they had fair hair and fair skin. And Nancy had olive skin and darker features. And she was busy behind JC, looked like she could have been doing some dusting or just moving some things around on a shelf. So it was always my understanding that JC was his wife and the kids were his kids, and Nancy was the housekeeper there.
JC told me that those her sisters, they were acting like friends or sisters or very close friends. Never appeared to me their relationship as mother and daughters.
Op een lentedag wekt Philip Garrido's gedrag grote argwaan bij een van zijn buren.
In 2006, we had a graduation party for my son. And we invited the entire neighborhood. Philip came down and he was in and out of the party, just kind of lurking around. And noticed that he was trying to talk to the younger girls. And as the girls left the party, some of them were parked down by his house, and he was trying to call them over to talk to them. They were smart enough to just continue on and get in their vehicles and come back and told us. And at that point, all the female guests were escorted out.
Volgens de politiedossiers merkt een andere vrouw een paar maanden later iets vreemds op in Garrido's achtertuin.
On November 30th, 2006, a neighbor of Garrido's called the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office and told them that Phil had young girls living in the back of his home, and a Contra Costa County deputy who arrived to check out the call spoke with Garrido in front of his home, but never actually entered.
Ook andere verdachte zaken rond Garrido's huis ontgaan de politie volledig.
If there's electrical cords going in and out, these are building code violations. All a police officer has to do is call the local building inspector and have the building inspector come out. Building inspector searches are administrative searches, and they're an exception to the Fourth Amendment, which means you don't need a search warrant.
One time, he had a fire in a van in his driveway, and so the fire department was out here for about 3 hours putting the fire out. I mean, they had ample opportunities to stumble across something, but never did.
Volgens zijn buren probeert Garrido zo min mogelijk op te vallen.
I do remember when we said something about taking pictures, he was like, well, no, I don't really want them to take any pictures.
There was something about his eyes that were untrusting.
In 2007 richt hij een onderneming op met de naam God's Desire. De buren vertelt hij dat hij van plan is om een kerk te stichten.
I asked Phil, what's going on? What's this about church? He just kind of grinned and laughed. He said it'll all be out soon.
He told me that he had frequent conversations with God. God had told him that he was going to encounter some obstacles, some hurdles, as which he told me he had trying to get the word out.
In augustus 2009 gaat Garrido naar de Universiteit van Californië in Berkeley. Hij wil toestemming vragen voor een religieus evenement op de campus, waarbij hij pamfletten wil uitdelen ter promotie van zijn God's Desire kerk. Starlet en Angel gaan met hem mee.
Philip Garrido may have been unraveling himself. To take the two children to the Berkeley campus was either a very bold act on his behalf or he was trying to call attention to himself.
Garrido wordt doorverwezen naar Lisa Campbell, die verantwoordelijk is voor speciale evenementen op de universiteit. Haar argwaan is direct gewekt. Ze besluit agenten Ellie Jacobs erbij te halen om kennis te maken met de twee meisjes.
Lisa asked, do you guys go to school? And they both just, like robots, were homeschooled. Just very straight. I just got a weird, uneasy feeling.
Toch ziet de campuspolitie geen reden om Garrido en de meisjes aan te houden.
They had just left UC Berkeley. He had handed in his paperwork to get a permit so that he could hand out his papers. They went home and then the next day, all heck broke loose.
De campuspolitie van Berkeley besluit wel om Philip Garrido's verleden na te trekken.
I was concerned because he was a sex registrant. The parole officer told me that he didn't have any kids. That's when my heart sank.
De reclasseringsbeambte belt Garrido onmiddellijk op met de mededeling dat hij zich de volgende dag moet melden in het gezelschap van de meisjes en hun moeder. Op 26 augustus verschijnt het viertal bij de reclassering.
Parole agent Edward Santos had a hard time identifying JC and the two girls because there wasn't much of a paper trail about them. He enlisted the help of Concord police, and after separating the girls from Philip and Nancy Garrido, under heavy questioning, the secret was revealed, and it turns out that the unknown woman was JC Dugard. El Dorado investigators were called in, and Philip and Nancy Garrido were placed under arrest.
Op 26 augustus 2009 wordt JC Lee Dugard met haar moeder herenigd. Ze heeft dan 18 jaar en 11 weken doorgebracht in gevangenschap. De totaal onverwachte redding van de 29-jarige JC veroorzaakt een ware lawine aan media-aandacht.
The community was not accustomed to having CNN and BBC and all of these world outlets parked in front of their homes for the better part of an entire week and a half.
We couldn't even get in and out of our own driveways. We were inundated with the media.
It's not exaggerating to call it a circus.
Over the years, there's been many instances of false hope for Terry. I'm thinking, oh gosh, here we go again, and there's going to be another false lead.
I just wanted to turn on the news and see if it was really her.
An emotional reunion when JC Dugard was reunited with family.
My mother called me and told me that JC had just walked into a police station and that it was really her.
When I heard that JC had been found, I was ecstatic.
My first thought was, thank God Terry Probin gets to hold her daughter again.
I was real happy until I started reading, finding out, seeing the pictures, and then I was angry, just angry.
It hit me hard, thinking about what she had to go through for 18 years, every single day. I can't even imagine.
Number one, why it took so long to find her. Number two, who dropped the ball?
I've always said there was a man and a woman. In the passenger window, I could see a black-haired woman, and the car. I've gone through hell. Up until yesterday, I was a suspect.
We're so happy she's back, but how did this happen under so many people's noses?
Als JC 1 dag terecht is, heeft een journalist in de gevangenis haar ontvoerder aan de telefoon.
In the end, this is going to be a powerful, heartwarming story. One that you're going to be really impressed. The last several years, I completely turned my life around. And you're going to find the most powerful story coming from the witness, from the victim. My life has been straightened out. Wait till you hear the story of what took place at this house. You're going to be absolutely impressed.
Op 28 augustus pleiten Philip en zijn vrouw Nancy onschuldig aan 29 aanklachten voor ontvoering, verkrachting en vrijheidsberoving.
The massive media exposure in this case will make a fair trial almost impossible.
De politie kant Philip Garrido's erf uit op zoek naar bewijsmateriaal voor andere misdrijven. Volgens rechtbankverslagen worden in de achtertuin gammele schuren en 2 tentjes aangetroffen. En ook een camping, douche en toilet. Iets verderop bevindt zich een geluiddichte ruimte die Garrido als studio gebruikte waar hij godsdienstige en romantische liedjes opnam.
It was like contemporary country kind of music, but all about God and love and stuff like that. And I asked Philip, who did this music? He said, well, I composed it, I wrote it, I sang it, and I even recorded it.
Generally speaking, the lyrics of the music that Philip Garrido recorded strongly suggest a continuing sexual fascination with young girls.
Kennissen van hem verklaren dat Garrido geobsedeerd is door het vervaardigen van een magische zwarte doos.
Philip had a fascination with mind control and went so far as to purportedly create a device that would allow him to speak to people through his mind using a black box contraption that he had constructed himself.
He led people to believe that he could talk to you telepathically.
In de weken na de bevrijding van JC worden er druppelsgewijs feiten omtrent Philip Garrido naar buiten gebracht.
Garrido ran a home-based printing business, pamphlets, business cards, things of that nature. And we've learned since that it was J.C. Dugard performing a lot of the labor.
When we hear that J.C. played some kind of a role in the printing business, we tend to think from where we sit that was her cooperating. I would suggest that was not the case. I think that was J.C. surviving.
Veel mensen vragen zich af waarom JC in al die jaren nooit heeft geprobeerd te ontsnappen.
It's a common myth about a victim of a kidnapping that if they don't try to escape, that they wanted to stay. And that is not by any means the case. These people are absolutely terrified. It's not uncommon that they would be threatened with the safety of their family if they were to try to escape. And so the thought of escape oftentimes becomes as terrifying as the thought of captivity.
Op 14 september 2009 stelt een rechter van de hogere rechtbank van El Dorado Philip Garrido's borgsom vast op $30 miljoen. De advocaten van Nancy maken bekend dat zij afziet van een verzoek om borgstelling. Garrido krijgt tevens te horen dat hij psychiatrisch zal worden onderzocht.
Philip was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
It's going to be very difficult for a jury to consider this man not guilty by reason of insanity. The insanity plea, although legal in California and legal throughout the United States, is very, very difficult to present. The defense has the burden of proof.
Op 29 oktober 2009 neemt de zaak de zoveelste verrassende wending.
A man by the name of Kenneth Slayton surfaced, claiming to be the biological father of JC.
I'm here to see that justice works and support my daughter JC and her daughters.
Slayton claimed that he had a short relationship with JC's mother and that the timelines matched to suggest that he was the father. And he held a press conference expressing a desire to reunite with a daughter that he has had absolutely zero contact with for the entirety of her life.
Hopefully, in a short period of time, I get to see JC and give her my support. I think she needs it.
Ondertussen kondigt de inspecteur-generaal van de staat Californië aan dat hij zal onderzoeken of Garrido 18 jaar lang ongemerkt zijn gang heeft kunnen gaan als gevolg van missers binnen het reclasseringssysteem.
Philip Garrido was a violent rapist, and he should have been looked at way back in the beginning.
I can't imagine how someone who is supposed to be under that level of scrutiny could not have been revealed as kidnapping and impregnating a young girl. It's a colossal blunder.
It's good that she's been out of the public eye and able to readjust with her family and start knowing what a normal life is all about. I would just tell her that, we loved her and that we missed her. We never gave up hope.
Welkom terug bij Reportage. In het najaar van 2009 blijft de politie op zoek naar details van de 18 jaar durende ontvoering van JC Lee Dugard. Ondertussen duiken de inmiddels 29-jarige JC, haar 2 dochters, kinderen van haar ontvoerder, en haar familie onder om te ontkomen aan de massale aandacht van de media.
I worry about JC becoming too public too quickly. The family needs a lot of privacy.
They have secluded themselves and they are giving themselves time to spend time together, to adjust, to get to know each other again, to adapt to this new world.
Terwijl ze aan het bijkomen is van alle ontberingen, geniet JC naar verluidt van eenvoudige geneugten, zoals een warme douche nemen, in een zacht bed slapen en tv kijken op een grote flatscreen tv.
It's good that she's been out of the public eye and able to readjust with her family and start knowing what a normal life is all about.
In South Lake Tahoe wordt de ontvoering van JC gebruikt als wijze les voor de volgende generatie kinderen.
The Seroptimus started the Fighting Chance program to teach children how to be safe and stay safe.
This is our Fighting Chance car. It's a part of our program where we teach the kids how to get away if a stranger were to ever come into our community. We teach them how to pull wires, how to yell, scream. If they get locked into a trunk, we teach them how to open the trunk.
What I think is important to realize out of this whole tragedy is that there was a good outcome. JC was found alive. And for those parents who have had their children abducted, don't give up hope.
Sharon Murch is nog altijd op zoek naar haar dochter Michaela, die in 1988 bij een supermarkt in het Californische Hayward ontvoerd werd.
Michaela's case was actually being actively investigated. Since JC has been found, it's brought not only a lot of leads and a lot of information, but a lot of people who want to help. A lot of people who don't want to see another child fall through the cracks.
It's one thing to hear that there are 58,000 non-family abductions every year, and it's another thing to put a face there. And JC is the face.
Op 4 november 2009 wordt door de inspecteur-generaal van Californië een rapport vrijgegeven waarin de werkwijze wordt bekritiseerd van de reclasseringsbeambten die Philip Garrido onder hun hoede hadden.
During the 10-year period that California supervised Philip Garrido, the department often failed to follow its own procedures established to supervise dangerous sex offenders.
The fact is, the blame can be spread around. There were a lot of parts of the system that broke down here and that didn't do what they were supposed to do.
In januari 2010 dienen JC en haar familie dan ook een schadeclaim in bij de staat ter compensatie van alle ontberingen. Op 1 juli 2010 keert de staat Californië $20 miljoen aan smartengeld uit aan de familie voor het gebrekkige toezicht van ambtenaren op Garrido in de periode dat hij voorwaardelijk vrij was. Philip en Nancy Garrido zijn nog altijd in afwachting van hun proces, waarin ze vervolgd worden voor ontvoering en verkrachting. Data voor het proces zijn nog niet vastgesteld. Voor JC en haar familie kunnen de gebeurtenissen niet meer worden teruggedraaid. Maar iedereen in hun omgeving is bereid hen waar mogelijk te steunen.
We're going to see a lot of joy and we're going to see a lot of relief. But given the magnitude of the trauma that JC experienced, there's going to be perhaps some depression or some anxiety or some anger.
I want them to keep him locked up forever and a day. Keep Nancy locked up 2 lifetimes. And then JC can heal. She can grow with her daughters. She can meet someone and learn how to love.
To JC, I prayed for you when you were kidnapped when you were 11 and always, always hoped that you would be found. And to be found with these 2 beautiful daughters and to be brought back into the loving arms of your family is a miracle. You will survive. You survived 18 years in a backyard. You've already done the tough work. You're a heroine and a champion for other missing children. God bless you. I know she's going to be all right.
I hope that JC Lee and her daughters have a bright future, that they have every opportunity to be able to have a good education, to be able to have peace, to be able to have happiness. We in Tahoe want them to know they're always welcome back.
I would just tell her that, we loved her and that we missed her. We never gave up hope.
Tot zover deze reportage. Volgende week zijn we er weer met een opmerkelijke documentaire. Voor nu, Bedankt voor het kijken, een hele goede nacht en graag tot volgende week zondag.